Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 9 fundamentals of human behavior. And if you understand these 9 fundamentals, this would drive your marketing efforts. So starting with number 1, which is people always want the best value. And it depends how important the decision is. And psychologically, if it's any sort of buying decision where other people are going to make some sort of comment on it, then it becomes more important. Basically, people want to be convinced that they've got the best value and they've made the right choice. And that gets interesting then, because what happens is people buy based on emotion, often negative emotion, to solve a problem or an issue. But then they need to be able to justify what they've bought using logic. So the ability to be able to justify it comes into the emotion bit, because they've got this emotional thing that they want to be convinced themselves and prove to others that they've made the right decision. And this is more the case. The more important the decision, the more this becomes the case. And that's not just about about money. It's also about, if it's something where people at work are going to be able to judge whether you've made the right decision or not, then it becomes an important decision. So people are always looking for the best value. Now, what will happen is, if there's nothing to set your product or service aside from your competitors, then the only way to judge which is the best value is on price, which is where a lot of people get into competing on price. So obviously you need to be able to therefore set yourself aside. So you need to have something about your product that gives you a competitive edge, and that's what we call a market dominating position. Second fundamental, which actually fits in quite nicely with the first one, is that people always like to buy from a specialist or an expert. So given the choice between a generalist and a specialist or an expert, they would always rather buy from a specialist or expert, and they'll pay extra for that. So what that means is that therefore you need an ideal target niche customer or client who you've clearly identified, and you know what their demographics are, age, gender, where they live, what they do, what sort of income group they are, what sort of house they live in, etc. But also their psychographics, i.e. what is it that motivates them to buy, which we'll come back to. So they always prefer to buy from a specialist or expert, and that is why you need to clearly identify your ideal target customer. And that enables you to do the first bit, because if you know who your ideal customer is and you know what motivates them to buy, then you know how to tweak or innovate your business to give them more of what they want to buy. The third thing is that people always buy, well, not always, 70% of the time people buy for negative reasons, and only 30% of the time for gain, for positive reasons. So 70% of the time, people are buying to solve an issue, problem, or concern. That is, unless it's an everyday purchase or an emergency purchase. But generally, people are actually only going to buy when the pain and the discomfort and the problem or the issue becomes so great that they want to actually sort it. So 70% of the time, people buy for negative reasons. Therefore, you should always market to the negative. Well, market to both, but you should market mainly to the negative. So if you know your ideal customer and you know a problem, issue, or concern that they've got on their mind that they want a solution to, then that's the first bit here. That's what you should be addressing. You know your ideal customer, you know their issues of concern. That's the second bit. And then you market to that problem, issue, or concern. And the way you do it is by what we call the conversion equation, which basically says you have an interrupt that says you've got this issue, problem, or concern. You have an engage, which says I can offer you a solution to that problem, issue, or concern. You've got an educate, which says this is how it all works, and these are all the people who've used it. And you have a risk-free offer, because then there's no risk involved, and people can engage with you to take advantage of your offer while they make their mind up. It's called the buyer's journey. While they make their mind up whether to buy or not, because they don't want to be seen to make the wrong decision, and they'd rather take time to do so. And that's why generally people need multiple points of contact before they buy, and it's called the buyer's journey. The fourth thing is that follows on nicely from that, really, and that is that at any given time, other than for emergency or everyday purchases or impulse buys, at any given time, only 1% of potential buyers are now buyers. 69–70% of them are future buyers, and 30% won't buy at all, but you don't know who they are. So therefore, you should be marketing to all of the potential future buyers rather than just trying to sell to the now buyers. And the way you market to these people is by following the conversion equation, which we already said. And your offer is an offer to provide them with further information, which enables them to ensure that by the time they do decide to buy, they're getting the best value. and you should have a flow of information, because these people, these future buyers, will take several points of contact before they're ready to buy, and most sellers give up far too early. 20% of sellers keep going long enough to get 80% of the business. The fifth one is reciprocity. Now, what this means is that people can't stand to be in someone else's debt. So if you hold a door open for someone, they'll rush to hold the next door open for you. If you give someone anything, like a recommendation or do them a favor, they'll be anxious to return that. So therefore, any marketing that you can devise whereby you give them something free will have them feeling they owe you. So therefore, free information, free ideas guides, free information packs, checklists, all of those sort of things, or a free evaluation or a free consultation, any of those sort of things are more likely to get them to want to return the compliment and then buy something off you. The sixth thing is authority. Now, what authority means is it's very similar to this specialist or expert, which is why there's 10 here, but really I'm saying there's 9 fundamentals. What I mean by authority is 2 things, actually. One, people want to deal with a specialist or an expert, and they want to be told what the best choice is by that specialist or expert. Now, obviously, you do it in a tactful way, but really people want to be guided. So they will always bow to authority, in the sense that if they think that you're an expert in your field and you're telling them that this is what they need, they're much more likely to buy from you than from a generalist who they don't see as an authority in the field. So people always defer to authority. The 7th thing is that people prefer to buy off people they like. So, and in fact, I've heard it said, and I think this is probably true, that people won't buy at all off people they don't like, even if they really want the product. They'll buy it from someone else. So this fits in with the know, like, and trust that you hear in various networking groups, which basically says that unless people like you and trust you, they won't buy from you. And generally, people like themselves. So therefore, that's why it becomes really important. If you're dealing with a prospect, you need to do things like dress in a similar way to they do, maybe speak in a similar-ish way to they do, mirror their gestures. If they're a fast talker, you speak quickly. If they're a slow talker, you speak slowly. If on the disc profile they're D's or I's, then you should match your behavior accordingly. And if they're S's or C's, match your behavior accordingly. If they're visual, then you should use visual language. If they're audio, you should use audio language. If they're kinetic, that's it, then you should use sort of kinetic language. So you should match what you say and how you behave to your prospects, because people like themselves, and they will only buy off people they like. The 8th thing is commitment or consistency. Now, this is quite a good one as well, because what this means is that if you can get people to start actually buying from you, they're much more likely to continue to do so. So it's far easier to sell to an existing customer than it is to sell to a new customer. It's 5 to 8 times easier and cheaper to do that, which means that's why you need, say, to have a downsell option. So instead of losing a customer because they can't afford or aren't prepared to pay the price you're charging for your full price offering, you want to get them to still buy from you, even if it means they buy a lower price, lower value offering, but come into your fold. So once they become customers from you, they're much more likely to buy again, because they've already then decided and made the decision that they can actually be a customer of yours and deal with you. And then you get the chance at a later stage to upsell and cross-sell to them. So it's important to get people to commit to buying from you, and then it's much easier to get them to carry on buying from you than if they haven't made that commitment in the first place. The 9th thing is scarcity. So basically, the biggest enemy of making a decision is apathy or procrastination. So what happens is people will put things off until they really can't do so anymore. So that's why you sell to the negative, because once people have a problem, issue, or concern that's got to the stage where they want to sort it, then they'll make a decision now. And that's why you also create scarcity or time. So that can be scarcity of number or scarcity of time, because otherwise people will say, well, okay, I'll do this sometime, maybe next week, maybe next month. But if you want to get people to act now, then they have to think that there's a scarcity. That's what car dealers do, isn't it? They say, I'll go and have a word with my manager, see if we can get you a red one. I've phoned around, I've managed to find a red one. There's one left, would you want it? Well, that creates scarcity, and that persuades people to buy now. And the reason I use that example is because that's exactly what I did when I bought a red car. And then the 10th one is social proof. Now, what this means is that there's a big risk involved in buying something from someone you haven't dealt with before, and people don't like the risk. And effectively, you've got to get over this risk. And all of these things help you get over the risk, because all of these things make people more willing to trust you and buy from you. But the big one is social proof. If you've got evidence from people who've bought from you before and are happy with the purchase, then obviously the more of that evidence you can provide, the better. So that's testimonials. There's other forms of social proof as well, though. So things like qualifications, membership of trade bodies, recommendations, all of those things come under the heading of social proof, and all of those things reduce the risk. And in amongst that, by the way, would be, in amongst this reducing the risk would also be strong guarantees, and strong guarantees would probably come into value here. So people are much more likely to see your product or service as having value if there's lower risk involved. If you offer a cast iron guarantee. So those are the fundamentals of human behavior, and all of your marketing should address those fundamentals. And if you do, then you'll be far more successful than the generalist who basically just tries to sell products to now buyers and doesn't actually aim their marketing efforts at these fundamentals. So I hope you found that useful. This is Bernard Keavy, and I've been talking about 9 fundamentals of human behavior, although there's 10 on here. There's 2 of them are the same. The authority and specialist, they're similar. So there's 9 fundamentals of human behavior, and if you follow them in all of your marketing efforts, you'll be much more successful than your competitors who don't do that. So thank you very much for listening. Hello, Phil. Hello, Tony. And hello, Ross.